Ladies and gentlemen, the following podcast is set for one episode. Your host from Columbus, Ohio, is Michael Kirk. Welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast. Hello and welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast, your digital audio dirt sheet for all things Super Show. This is it, folks. The last episode before Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2. Last week I gave you the match card. There have been changes, there have been some updates, so let's go over those right now. I reported last week that the Grump, because he had 3 shots at LFF championships, was given the choice to give up those shots to be put into the Claim the Throne number 1 contender match, where the winner will become the number 1 contender for the LFF World Heavyweight Championship. He has decided to trade in his shot at the LFF Hardcore Championship, his shot at the LFF Tag Team Championship, and his shot at the LFF Trios Championship. How's that going to work? Well, the Grump has already allocated 2 of those 3 shots. First, he has given the shot he had at the LFF Hardcore Championship to the Living Weapon, Michael Deans. This means that Thursday, the match for the LFF Hardcore Championship will now be the LFF Hardcore Champion, Mark Perry, defending against the Big Guy and the Living Weapon. He has also given the tag shot to his fellow Inner Circle member, Mysterious. This means that Mysterious and Chad Gropak will be facing Impact for the LFF Tag Team Championships. This is actually going to give an advantage to this team because Mysterious and Chad Gropak will be able to be in the same room during this match. Big advantage to Inner Circle with this change. As for the Trios Championship, we do not know who that championship shot will go to. The Grump has been given time to decide, because obviously there's still going to be a match between the champion and Chris Pate, and then there will still be a match between the winner of that match, whoever emerges as champion, and Mallory the Destroyer. So there is quite a bit of time for this Trios Championship to be decided. That gives us 5 competitors in the Claim the Throne match. As I reported last week's show, the 4 people that had been announced prior to last Wednesday's Talk of the Universe were the Last of a Dying Breed, Mike D, the Cannoli, Anthony Perry, Loudmouth, Leo Larynx, James Booker. We can add the Grump, Danny Thunder to that list, and the last entrant, Robert the Brain Dunn, will round out the 6 competitors in the Claim the Throne match. Robert the Brain Dunn was able to get this shot at a number 1 contendership because he, as the winner of PAX South, was promised the same shot that the winner of PAX East got. The winner of PAX East was Mike D. Because Mike D is in the Claim the Throne match, that means Robert the Brain Dunn also gets to be in the Claim the Throne match. That is our 6 competitors. It's quite an accomplished field. 4 of the 6 have, of course, already held LFF Gold. The Grump and Loudmouth Leo, obviously, as the former LFF Tag Team Champs. Robert the Brain Dunn is a 2-time LFF Tornado Tag Champion. And James the Booker has also held the LFF Tornado Tag Championship. So quite an accomplished group. I would like to have seen some people, at least one other person who hadn't held LFF Gold in the match. We're getting 2, but I would like to have seen a little more new blood. But, 1/3 isn't bad. We've had some more information about the Phase 1 of Faction Wars. Going into this week, we knew it was going to be a 2-hour period starting, I believe, at 2:30 Saturday afternoon. That's the 19th of September. There have been a few changes made, some tweaks, if you will. Number 1, there's going to be a minimum number of matches you have to play. We don't know what that minimum is yet, but there's going to be a minimum. Number 2, there's going to be a maximum number of matches you can play. Again, we don't know what that number is going to be, but there's a minimum and there's a maximum, which I think is a good idea, especially because you don't want players sitting out and not playing if they think they're going to cause their team losses. I like the change. They've also talked about preventing you from going negative. Last week I reported that a win for your team got you 2 points. A loss for your team lost you a point. Obviously, let's say the minimum is 5. If you lose all 5 of your matches, and that's all you're able to play in the 2 hours, you've just earned your team negative 5 points. You could also find yourself in a situation where 30 minutes in, you've hit the minimum number of matches, you're at negative points. You might decide, look, I'm just going to quit playing because I don't want to hurt my team. And if I don't think I can turn around and reduce the number of negatives, there's no reason to go further in the hole. I'll just stop. So you play your minimum number of matches. You have an hour plus left to play. You're like, look, it's better not to hurt my team. So I like the proposal that you can't go negative. Because to me, I can absolutely see somebody saying, look, I'm in the hole. I don't want to go further in the hole. I'm just going to stop. Because it's very clear the goal of this is for people to play as much as possible. They don't want people sitting out and not playing. They also have proposed some sort of bonus if you're able to defeat somebody who's otherwise undefeated. For example, if somebody's 10-1 and you're the one in their 10-1, that may get you a prize or a bonus to your team. It just depends. But they've kicked around a few ideas. I imagine we'll know more after Talk of the Universe this Wednesday. They have also announced the Faction Wars deck lists are due. The last thing I saw was they are due Wednesday night before Talk of the Universe. That is the 16th of September before 8:30. I'd probably recommend getting in no later than Tuesday night. That is, all 6 members of the team must give their list to the captain. That includes the entrance card. I would say also is the spectacle type, but since everyone's playing the same spectacle type, it's going to be determined by the team. And then your team captain must email that list to griffbriggs@srguniverse.com. And I would recommend getting that in. You do not want to be late on that list. I would recommend getting that in no later than Tuesday night. The last update for Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2 involves the Underworld Birdcage match. Last week it was announced that the mystery opponent would be Matt Nealon. So the list would be Matt Nealon, Alan Hawkins, Everett Stevens, Brian Schmidt, and myself taking on the champion Kirk Polka in the Birdcage. Matt Nealon was attacked. He was smacked with a shovel by an unknown assailant, and he will not be able to be in the Birdcage match. Instead, he has picked his longtime friend and tag team partner in Double the Fun Time, Bob Odell. Bob Odell will be the third entrant into the Birdcage, meaning that he'll be the first person to come in. Of course, the match always starts with 2 people. He'll be the first person to come in the Birdcage after the start. What competitors is he going to be using? I don't know if he's going to be using Johnny Super Show, who was the competitor I believe Matt Nealon won the shot with, or if he's going to be able to pick his own. But Bob Odell is the last entrant in the Birdcage, replacing Matt Nealon. That is all of the news about Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2 that I have. A couple things I wanted to mention. Number 1, last year I thought the Faction Wars dragged on too long to the point where people lost interest. I know that the powers that be at SRG disagree. They thought the amount of time that Faction Wars took built intrigue. I thought it just created a lot of disinterest. People forgot Faction Wars was even going on when it finally resolved. At one point, talking about Faction Wars, and I believe this was before the Grand Gathering went virtual for the second time, that Faction Wars would be halfway through by the end of the Grand Gathering. There's no way that's the case as of right now. Because from everything they've told us about Faction Wars, after Phase 1 on Saturday, we won't even have any teams cut. Last year at Faction Wars, at the Grand Gathering, at least we had the top cut determined leaving Grand Gathering. When we finish up Grand Gathering weekend this time, none of the 19 teams involved, and potentially 20, there's still a possibility that a 20th team may join late. None of those teams will be eliminated by the end of the weekend. So I don't know how long they're planning on this taking. Going from memory, I want to say that Faction Wars in 2019 started with the Grand Gathering, which was in May, and ended around October, so about 6 months long. And that was with having an established top cut coming out of the Grand Gathering. This year, we are not even going to have a top cut when Grand Gathering ends. And I believe, and I'm not 100% on this, but I know this year the plan was for the Grand Gathering to happen in March. March is 6 months away from September. Is it possible that Faction Wars may not be done before the next Grand Gathering? I really hope that's not the case, but that is something to think about, and I hope it's something that the powers that be at SRG take into consideration and plan accordingly so that this wraps up in a timely fashion, because I think it would be terrible if this thing did not wrap up before the next Grand Gathering, and with some time before the next Grand Gathering. If Faction Wars only wrapped up a week or two before the next Grand Gathering, I would be appalled with that. I would think that is absolutely terrible. That's my thoughts on the Faction Wars. The other thing that I have not seen announced anywhere, Chris Pate was supposed to challenge Beatstick Brandon for the Trios Championship before Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2, before this weekend coming up. I have not seen anything talking about when the match is supposed to take place. It is Sunday night as I record this. The match might be happening Monday night and being live streamed on the Compound's Twitch page. That makes sense. Beatstick Brandon is part of RCW, so it makes sense to have the match on the Compound Monday night. But I haven't heard or seen anything about that. And at this point, I would actually argue, if it does not happen Monday night, that the Chris Pate match be postponed. Because to me, and even Monday night to me is cutting it too close. We are too close to Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2 to have essentially 2 championship matches. That'd be 2 championship matches in less than a week. I think that is not enough time between bouts. We need more time, and a short turnaround like that is not good for the championship. But those are all the thoughts that I have on Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2. Other than that, I'm looking forward to it. I have not been reporting on the singles tournament, but today is the last day for the singles tournament. Results should be reported, and then if there are any tiebreakers, those should happen Monday. We should, by the end of Monday night, have a top 32 determined for Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2 singles tournament. I don't know if the winner of this tournament is going to go on to have a shot at a championship. We'll just have to see. But that's what's going on. The other thing I'll bring up now I do not recall if I talked about this last week. I'll talk about this week. Last week on Talking Universe, this would be a week ago, Wednesday, the 2nd of September. There was a hacking incident where there was a sale on a single tag team or single trios finisher. That's a tornado tag team finisher. This week, the 9th, they had a sale on steel cage cards. These are going to be cards that could potentially act as finishers or have some other sort of effect in steel cage matches. These will likely be follow-up cards. These will likely be skill requirement cards. But they are all revolving around the steel cage match type. These cards have also now gone on sale. And these will be on sale until Monday. So tomorrow, the 14th of September, is the last day. All three of those things will be on sale. So if you happen to hear this Monday and you want to pick up one of those three things, create your own card for steel cage matches or create a finish card for a tornado tag team or trios competitor, this is your chance. That's the news. Let's talk about the tournament results from this week. So 4 tournaments this week. 1 Thursday, 1 Friday, 2 Saturday. We'll start with Thursday. These are the Boss Takeover tournaments, although considering Press 1P is no longer really able to run them, they might be getting a name change, but for right now, it's the Boss Takeover. Again, if you're able to win 3 Boss Takeover or other Thursday night events, you will have a shot at the Trios Championship. This week, the finals came down to the Grump using Shade, a competitor that he has been in a little feud over with Shade as to who made that competitor famous, taking on Matt Barone using Flip Highwater. And the Grump, Danny Thunder, won the Thursday night tournament. That gives him his 4th win in that and puts him only 2 wins away from potentially getting a second shot at the Trios Championship. So even though he's given up a shot at the Trios Championship, if he continues to win these Thursday events, he could find himself with a second shot at the championship. Friday night, we saw a pop-up event hosted by one of the competitors in the Claim the Throne match, the Cannoli. This event, I believe, had 4 rounds of Swiss and then cut to a top 8. The finals saw the Fireball, Scott Winterbauer, using Colt Cabana, taking on Micah Swafford, using the SRG Boss. Both of these were the new versions of their competitors, new Colt Cabana and new SRG Boss. And Micah Swafford wins with the new SRG Boss. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to the Grump earlier. I may have mentioned that. Saturday, we had 2 tournaments. The first was the Brunch at Puzzles tournament. I neglected to mention it with the Cannolis event, but I'll mention it here. Both of these events had stipulations in the top cut. I want to say that the Cannolis were random. They were not random in the Brunch event, but both events had stipulations. The finals of Brunch of Puzzles saw Chris Pate using Gia de los Muertos take on Candyman Dan Hughes, using Macho Manny, and Chris Pate, who was undefeated going into the finals, wins. Congratulations to Chris Pate. Saturday afternoon, we have the Mad Custodian hosting the Clean Sweep tournament. This was a tournament with no entrance fee, where the winner receives a Champion of Kickstarter card. If the winner already has a Champion of Kickstarter card, he must pay that forward to someone who does not. The finalists here were Lance Eustace, also using Gia de los Muertos. So second time we've seen Gia in a tournament, taking on Chris Pate using X-Royce. And for the second time today, the Gia de los Muertos player wins. Lance Eustace wins, I believe, his first online tournament. So congratulations to Lance. Congratulations to all the winners. Next week, tournament-wise, with Grand Gathering starting Thursday night, I would be surprised if we see any online tournaments this weekend. I'm assuming a lot of people who normally would be playing online will be playing in the top 32 cut Friday night. A lot of people will be playing in the Faction Wars on Saturday. So I just be really surprised if we have any sort of tournament play this weekend because of the Virtual Grand Gathering 2 Part 2 events. I will assume that we're going to have Dojo Tuesday night. And maybe we'll see something pop up on Wednesday. Maybe we'll see something pop up Monday. Who knows? But right now, outside of Tuesday night Dojo, I do not expect to see anything happening tournament-wise in the Super Show, at least online. Before we go, I'm going to take a look at a couple competitors that were released, I want to say, back at Gen Con. It's part of the virtual Gen Con release. While I'm thinking about it, I'll take the time to mention now, I have not seen anything about any competitors releasing this week. However, we should expect it. This is virtual Grand Gathering weekend. If this was regular Grand Gathering, we would have a competitor release. So expect competitors and cards to come out this week. I just don't know what those are. I don't know what they're going to be. It's going to be a surprise, but I would expect it to come out. The competitors I'm going to cover this week are Mrs. Living Weapon and the Tornado Tag Team featuring Mrs. Living Weapon, The Weapons. Here are the skills and here's the gimmick for Mrs. Weapon, Amy Deans. Power 5, Technique 9, Agility 8, Strike 10, Submission 7, Grapple 6. When you hit a strike, your opponent discards one card from their hand. If we look at the stops in the 13 through 15 slots, with a strike of 10, running there it makes sense. With a technique of 9, single leg crab makes sense. With a grapple of 6 and a power of 5, I would not run DDT or falling power slam there. The gimmick, when you hit a strike, your opponent discards one card from the hand. Nice, simple gimmick. Would make me want to play cards that allow me to get strikes back to my hand. Things like Snap Headbutt at the 22 slot, which is a card that, if it's in the discard pile, and I roll strike and it can add it to my hand. Things like Standing Drop Kick or Jump Kick. Those are leads where when I roll strike or agility, I believe, are the skills, I can add the strike from the discard pile to my hand. And then just maybe play cards that will force my opponent to discard that just tie in with my gimmick. Let's go through the finishes for Mrs. Weapon, Amy Deans. We'll start with the finish strike, number 28. I don't know you. Your opponent's gimmick is blank. If your opponent breaks out, this card remains in play. If stopped, you lose the match via disqualification. I like this finish a lot. You will have to sort of play cards to allow you to avoid disqualification here. You don't want to play your finish and lose because it gets stopped. There's spectacles that do that. There's entrance cards that do that. There's actually a finish she has, I'll talk about in a moment, that does that. I do like that not only just like the gimmick during the breakout roll, but because this remains in play after the breakout, it continues to blank the opponent's gimmick. That's very strong. If your opponent does not have a way to remove a card from play, if they don't have a card that discards a card you have in play, this thing, once it gets out, is going to vex your opponent. Very nice finish card. The finish grapple, number 29, that's my purse. It's a spotlight card. +1 to power, +1 to submission. If I don't know you is stopped, you may shuffle this card into your deck from your hand. Until the end of the turn, The match cannot end by disqualification. +1 to power will increase your power from a 5 to 6. +1 to submission will increase the submission from a 7 to an 8. This gives you 2 6s, 2 8s, a 9, and a 10. Not bad, 2 to 3 chance to roll 8 or better. The way that I understand the text works after looking at it is this. If I play that finish strike, I don't know you, and it's stopped. If I have That's My Purse in my hand, I'm assuming I would take it out, reveal it to my opponent so they can see that I have That's My Purse, show them the text. I would shuffle this card into my deck from my hand. So I play I Don't Know You, they stop it, I show them That's My Purse from my hand, I shuffle it into my deck from my hand, and because I do this until the end of the turn, the match can end by disqualification. So I'm essentially sacrificing Finish Grapple from my hand. I'm taking out of my hand and shuffling in my deck, and that will prevent me from losing via disqualification when I Don't Know You is stopped. I like that. That's a nice bit of mitigation as well. You do have to have sort of both finishes then in your hand to play I Don't Know You, but that's the grapple finish. The submission finish for Mrs. Weapon Amy Deans is Amy Lock. +1 to agility, +2 to grapple. If I Don't Know You is in play, double these bonuses. So if you hit I Don't Know You, your opponent breaks out, this remains in play, and you hit the Amy Lock, you're going to get, instead of +1 to agility and +2 to grapple, +2 to agility and +4 to grapple. How does that work? If the bonuses are normal, +1 to agility will increase that to a 9, +2 to grapple will increase that to an 8. So you'll have a 5, 7, 8, 2 9s, and a 10. 50% chance to roll 9 or better is good. If I Don't Know You is in play and these are doubled, it'll increase the agility to a 10 and the grapple to a 10. So you have 5, 7, 9, and 3 10s. 50% chance to roll 10 is really good. That is Mrs. Weapon, Amy Deans. Now let's take a look at the tag team featuring the Living Weapon and Mrs. Weapon, The Weapons. Here are the skills, and here's the gimmick. Power 10, Technique 18, Agility 16, Strike 20, Submission 14, Grapple 12. Double the numbers in the text of your cards with Roundhouse, Sweep, and Takedown in the name. Your opponents cannot double the number in their cards. The top 2 skills here are Strike and Technique. So everything I said about the 13 through 15 for Amy's card fits here. Everything I said about 14 fits here because Mrs. Weapon's 2 lowest skills are Power and Grapple. The Weapon's 2 lowest skills are Power and Grapple. Double the numbers in the text of your cards with Roundhouse, Sweep, and Takedown. Obviously, this makes me think of a card like Russian Leg Sweep. Now I'd be getting +2 for every grapple you have in play when you play that. Takedown, Roundhouse, I'm not too familiar with a lot of those cards, but obviously you're going to want to look through and play cards that have Roundhouse, that have Takedown. I know there's a lot of grapples with Takedown, Diving Takedown, for example, although I do not know if there are numbers in that. Russian Leg Sweep, I mentioned, Heel Sweep. The next part of this has been kind of I wouldn't say controversial, but there's been some question about it. Your opponents cannot double the number in their cards. Some competitors say double the number, some say double the bonuses. There was some back and forth about this, but I believe the last thing I heard, the current ruling is, if it says double the bonuses, the Weapons does not prevent that doubling. It only prevents doubling the numbers when it actually says double the numbers. If it says double the bonuses, that part of the gimmick doesn't work. Now, there are no competitor finishes at this time for the Weapons, but they have both the Living Weapon Michael Dean's logo as well as Mrs. Weapon Amy Dean's logo. So you can use the finishes from both competitors with the Weapons. We'll go through Amy's finishes first, and then we'll look at the living weapons finisher. So, start with, I don't know you. Your opponent's gimmick is blank. If your opponent breaks out, this card remains in play. If stopped, you lose the match via disqualification. This again is Finish Strike number 28. It gives you no skill bonuses, but here's the thing. Because tornado tags have no disqualifications, if they stop this, you can't lose the match via disqualification. So this is a nice finish here. It's going to blank your opponent's gimmick, and then if they break out, their gimmick's going to remain blank because this card will remain in play. I like that a lot. Finish grapple, that's my purse. +1 to power, +1 to submission. If I don't know you is stopped, you may shuffle this card into your hand from your deck until the end of the turn. The match cannot end by disqualification. Since there are no disqualifications in Tornado Tag, the only thing you have to care about with this finish is +1 to power and +1 to submission. Gives you an 11, 12, 15, 16, 18, 20. We'll see how the other grapples work, but right now if I were just to compare that to the only generic grapple finish in the game, double death drop, +6 to your 2 lowest skills, your opponent buries 3 cards. If you have a card with table in the name in play, this is not better than that. The finish submission, number 30, the Amy Lock, +1 to agility, +2 to grapple. If I don't know you is in play, double these bonuses. If there's no doubling, 10, 14, 14, 17, 18, 20. If there is doubling, 10, 14, 16, 18, 18, 20. It's good with the doubling, gives you a 50% chance to roll 18 or better. Now let's take a look at the Living Weapons Michael Dean finishes. The Living Weapon Michael Dean's competitor set comes with 3 finishes, and he actually received a 4th finish that was available with the weapons. I mentioned earlier the weapons were released, I believe, as part of Virtual Gen Con. They were re-released around the time of Virtual Dragon Con with a new finisher for specifically the Living Weapon Michael Dean's, but also can be used with the weapons. Let's go through strike, grapple, submission here, and we'll talk about both grapples when we get there. The finish strike, Living Weapon Roundhouse Kick, number 28, is a spotlight card. Shuffle 1 other strike you have in play into your deck. When this card is in your discard pile, it is also a lead. It does have Roundhouse in the name, so you would actually double the numbers here. So you would shuffle 2 other strikes you have in play into your deck when you hit it. And then it's also a lead when it's in your discard pile. I kind of like I Don't Know You better. Neither one of these give you bonuses to your skills when you're going to roll your finish roll, but I think blanking your gimmick is stronger than shuffling strikes that you have in play into your deck. Next we'll look at the original finish grapple for the Living Weapon Michael Dean's Sweep the Leg, +3 to grapple. Shuffle up to 5 lead strikes from your discard pile into your deck and draw the same number of cards. Again, because this has sweep in the name, you're going to double the numbers. So it's going to be +6 to grapple, and you'll be shuffling up to 10 lead strikes. Normally, this is not something you can do. Most decks only have 5 lead strikes. 5 lead strikes, 4 follow-up strikes, and a finish strike. If you were playing Living Weapon Roundhouse Kick, you could shuffle this back in your deck because it is a lead in the discard pile. With the +6 to grapple, it gives you a 10, 14, 16, 2 18s, and a 20. That's not bad. 50% chance to roll 18 or better. It'd be nice if you're playing with the Living Weapon Roundhouse Kick, but I still think I like I Don't Know You better here. The other finish grapple, the new one, Scissor Kick Takedown. Again, because this has Takedown in the name, you will double the numbers in the text. It reads +1 to agility, +1 to submission, +1 to grapple. When the crowd meter is 2 or greater and you have a lead strike in play, this card is also a follow-up. With the weapons, because you're doubling, it's going to increase the grapple to a 14, the submission to a 16, and the agility to an 18. So you have a 10, 14, 16, two 18s, and a 20. That's really good. Now, because it's doubling the numbers, if you use Scissor Kick Takedown with the weapons, it actually will be when the crowd meter is 4 or greater, and you have a lead strike in play, this card is also a follow-up. So if you were thinking about doing something like rolling forearm, that's a lead strike, allows you to play a second card, and then playing Scissor Kick Takedown as a follow-up finish. You will not be able to do that at crowd meter 2. You will have to wait until crowd meter 4 to make that work. Bonus-wise, Scissor Kick Takedown is the best. Of the 3 finishes, I think it is the best, grapple-wise. Now let's look at the finish submission. Number 30, no mercy lock. +2 to power, +1 to submission. If your opponent breaks out, you may play 1 lead strike from your discard pile. +2 to power, increase the power to a 12. +1 to submission will increase that to a 15. So you'd have 2 12s, a 15, a 16, 18, and a 20. Not bad. If your opponent breaks out, you may play 1 lead strike from your discard pile. If you were playing this with Living Weapon Roundhouse Kick, to me, there is no reason why you should not be able to, if your opponent breaks out of this finish submission, take Living Weapon Roundhouse Kick out of the discard pile and play it as a finish. I have seen it ruled that you can't do that, although for the life of me, I don't know why. I don't know the reasoning behind that. But if it were allowed, that is something you could do with that combo. Although I do think, if I were going to recommend what you would play, leaving generics out of the equation, I would use the Amy Dean's finish, I Don't Know You, for my finish strike. I'd use the Living Weapon Michael Dean's finish, Scissor Kick Takedown, for the finish grapple. And I would use the Amy Dean's submission finish, Amy Lock. That's what I would do if I were playing the weapons. But if other things fit your playstyle better, feel free to play those. That is my thoughts on Mrs. Weapon Amy Dean's and the weapons. And that is going to do it for the show. A couple of things I wanted to mention. I recently put out episode 109, a special, where I sit down with Steve Resk and we go through a post made by Bob Huff, giving his thoughts on the state of Super Show and go through those points one by one and talk about them. If you have not heard that special, I recommend listening to that special. I will also be putting out a special where I go through the contents of the Claim the Throne box set and talk about them, including the prize pack, or talk about the competitors as well. It'll be at least 2 parts. 1 part talking about the cards, 1 part talking about the competitors. It could be more depending on how long each of those parts will be. I will not know until I've started the recording process. But look for those to be coming out soon. And that is going to do it for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and good day.